Hello, I am Alex Escareno. I am a 7th grade language arts teacher, and this is my final project for EDT 6040. To begin with, as a language arts teacher, I am not always the most visually experienced or talented person. So for me, this assignment was a daunting task that pushed me out of my comfort zone, as I'm used to expressing myself through language and words rather than through visual media. So when presented with this task, I wanted to utilize something that I could use in my classroom, and what better starting point than my school website. And one of the things that I noticed was I'm not a very good person who organizes things visually. I'm just not. If you look at my first homepage, you have here different color schemes which separate, uh, topics. There's a very cluttered nav bar, a random picture of a church in Italy. None of these things really do connect or make sense. And starting off just looking at this website, I know there's a lot of areas I can improve on. For this next part of my website, this is my useful links page. Again, I have two different clashing backgrounds, a very bland border, but I do have a bolded title on the page that's centered near the top, as well as to continue. This is the rest of my useful links. So I go from teal to a light green off gray to white to separate the backgrounds of all three of my videos. This is my article of the week page. Again, you see this random banner of a church in Italy, and then more resources here with links that present my article of the weeks, and then the requirements, and then videos on how to do them. I have a blank classwork page for all three of my classes, which if you look to the side here, you have classwork periods 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 9. I have a calendar, which really doesn't tell me much, nor is it connected to Google Classroom. And then my X block, which is a different type of course page, which again looks very cluttered. The images itself seem a lot bigger. All these images to present to you, I had to zoom in or zoom out of, and they do present a lot more space than there actually is there. When going through the improvements, I will show you the actual website as it stands currently. So to begin with the improvements, I really wanted to improve the homepage. Any website, the homepage is very crucial because it buys people into your website and allows you to navigate the rest. I wanted to create a visual literacy page because the whole point of this class is visual literacy and how do we use it. As a language arts teacher, I know I am at times very traditional where I can go into old school mode, but at the same time I want to embrace technology. I thought what better way than starting off the year looking at visual literacy and teaching those skills instead of going backwards and halfway through the year saying, oh, maybe this is stuff that kids need. I want to start this off right off the bat next year, where while we're learning about, the reading skills, there's also the visual skills needed to enhance my teaching. I wanted to continue with, I created two other pages which are based on my first two units in my school year, which first one is my literary criticism page, which follows my Common Core RL1, determining the main idea of a text and how it develops over the course of the text, and then my argument unit. I thought with both of these two units, it would be a great place for me to start adding visuals so students can use for practice as reference material. Again, the whole purpose of my website is to be a point of reference for the students to go back to in case they forgot something or something's confusing. That way I have multimedia images, video and images, and resources there for them to use. Unfortunately, with Google Sites, there isn't much that I could do to change the nav bar. There's not a lot of user choice where you're allowed to change the font or anything. So my nav bar is very simple. I condensed it again down to the 8 or 9 links that had various topics to being very concise and focused, where the first link is about me, the second link is my visual literary resources, then my literary criticism, argument unit, article of the week resources, and useful links. The nav bar is a lot smaller and it focuses just on my units, and now it is white on the teal background of the rest of the page. So now my new website looks a lot cleaner. Again, over here you have just the links, which are more concise. And instead of presenting the visual mess that it used to be, where I had a lot of text explaining a lot of things to students about me, I decided to use my Animoto video that I created at the beginning of the course to really give the students, a way of looking at me without expressly telling them. Yes, there's the captions that have descriptions of me, but a student looking at this image in the center would assume that Mr. Escareno probably is really into comic books, and maybe Iron Man was his favorite character, which actually he isn't. It's Captain America. And I wanted to give students a visual way to draw inferences about me, which I think is a great blend between traditional reading skills and visual literacy skills. And then I followed up with a mix of traditional text where or I have just a message to my students about what does it mean to be in my class, what do I expect of them, and the fact that we'll work together to overcome challenges. Using the concepts that I've learned in class, I had my text bold in the center of my page on the bottom, and then again, I don't have a lot of control over the fonts, so it's just very basic flat font, no serifs, but it is again bolded to stand out because if you don't bold the text on a Google site, it's actually very difficult to read. Next, as I brought up earlier, that I really wanted to incorporate a visual literacy resources page on my website because it's something that I want to start doing at the beginning of class and the beginning of the school year instead of working toward the middle. I think preparing myself for this, I'm going to be in the mindset where this is something that I do want to do. I want students to start learning so I can incorporate visual literacy into my classroom, especially when you have such things as like a textbook version of a story and then maybe a painting counterpart to it or a painting that might go with it. So using both the traditional literacy skills and visual literacy skills. The first thing I added to this part of my website is a video that explains visual literacy. As you can see to the side, it's the S as a student, Mr. Escareno, what is visual literacy that you keep speaking about in class? Obviously, that being a hypothetical, me trying to be funny joke. With myself responding with, take a look at this video, use a chart below to keep track of your thoughts. This video itself goes into what is visual literacy, and it provides visual examples of visual literacy and the skills that we need to have them. It goes and it also defines a term for the kids themselves. One of the resources I found was this 4Ws chart. What do I see? What does it remind me of? What's the artist's purpose? And so what? Where it allows students to take their notes on a visual medium. I think one of the things as teachers that we need to do a better job of is modeling our expectations for visual literacy skills. I know as an educator, I sometimes fall in the trap where I just expect my students to know how to do it. And obviously sometimes that isn't the best mindset to go about things, where it's just at this point, they've been with me for so long, I just sometimes think they're in my mind. So this is one way of teaching students how to take notes on visual media. Then I have two more videos. The first one's model think aloud strategy is from a teacher's point of view where he's modeling his thinking of a visual book. And then I have a student's point of view from that as well with my sources cited here. I think all three of these would be wonderful tools for students to reference outside of class, especially the 4Ws chart, which, I have a resource here that I do plan to be using for students to be taking notes on a visual medium. The next page I have is my literary criticism unit. I have the text centered white on black background. One of the things that I'm debating on changing is the backgrounds you see here. I like the fact that visually it separates the two concepts together, or separates them, but at the same time, they're both part of our literary criticism. So I think having them both be the same color teal would not be a bad thing, especially with the titles bolded and centered to separate the ideas. The first resource I provide to students is, again, the 4W sheet to take notes on visual media. And then this ad from Always, which is called #LikeAGirl. In gender theory, we look at how texts portray male and female relationships with each other, whether it's subservient or more powerful, etc. This video would be a great introductory activity for students to see that that the connotation of like a girl has always been negative, but when you have girls explaining that you may hit like a girl or run like a girl, it's because they are a girl, and there's nothing wrong with that. The second thing I did is I created just a quick question. It said for social economic theory, which is essentially Marxism, and to interpret the following two images, what does it say about social economic theory? And based off the images, what is SET? This, I think, is a good introductory image for students to get brainstorming on the idea itself. In the image here, it has the broken dollar, and you have this guy saying, "Hey, is it just me or is it getting wider?" And the other guy saying, "Sorry, can't talk on the phone with my realtor about a vacation house." Obviously, this guy's in the middle class or lower middle class, and this guy is in the upper middle, if not higher. And it's just talking about the fact that the dollar doesn't stretch as far anymore. And then you have this U.S. social class ladder. While it's a very text-dependent image, I think having the actual visual of a ladder on the image itself will ingrain it in students' minds that this is a ladder and you can climb up or down it depending on circumstances in your life. Again, at the top of my page, I have black banner, argument unit, white text, bolded, centered. And this part of the website is very bland for a reason. I just have the teal background because this only allows me to choose either white or teal, and I prefer to have some color than none. I have image 1, image 2, image 3, but I think in the course of visual media or visual literacy, I think having these 3 images here to introduce concepts of rhetoric to my students, those concepts being ethos, pathos, and logos, I think these 3 ads really do a great job of helping the students understand the idea without me explicitly stating writing on the board. Old school, ethos is credibility, logos is logic or facts. In this case, you have this woman with a pig and saying, need another reason to go to a veterinarian. You have Superman with got milk. If anyone's going to be drinking his milk, you would hope it would be the Man of Steel. And this Verizon versus AT&T wireless map. For the purpose of these 3 images, again, this whole website is just a start and improvement. The purpose of these 3 images is to introduce my students to these concepts of rhetoric. And what I've created is this argument essay brainstorm from the images I have. So for me, I created this, the rhetorical triangle for the students, and the text itself at the top center, I have the title of the handout. The text itself is written in what's called Consalis, and it's very like old school typing. And the student text is in traditional Arial font. And I think having the fonts being different from teaching writing and student writing personally helps me see what student work has been done instead of being caught up on what and trying to figure out what they've done. So image 1, again, this is a 4Ws worksheet. What do they see? What does it remind you of, etc. Image 2, image 3, which is the same process for all 3 images, which I want students to gain this habit of going through these questions as we're using visual media in the classroom, visual literacy skills in the classroom. But finally, I have students draw this conclusion that the vet image is either using logic, credibility, or emotions for them to start, associating these words with these images, and that way they could be a reference point to them when they go back and review these concepts for, their argumentative essay or my assessment and what have you. So before going through this project, I developed a checklist, an assessment tool for me to figure out whether this website will be useful to me. I've created just different domains with just general questions about the website. Is it easy to follow? Does it draw user attention, etc.? Going down into specific pages that I knew I wanted to have. Again, this is a work in progress as well. While I'm not completely finished with everything I want to add to my website, because that was a very daunting task to have something for every one of my units. I think this is a great start for me to continue working on this project for myself and for my students. So I went through, about me pages that allow their students to get to know their teacher. And I think one of the best parts is does it allow students to draw inferences, because I'm big on students using the inferencing skills in class. And I have most pages asked does it use just one type of literacy. I honestly want to try to be hitting a blend of both traditional literacy and visual literacy. And so my goal was to try to have as many pages with using both literacies as possible. And you can see over here, same question in the visual literacy page, literary theory page, and argumentative page has the same questions as well. And then I provide space for myself of like what other resources this page provide, comments and usefulness, just to give me a place to jot down my own thoughts. So that was the template that I used. And then I went through here and answered the questions for myself. I thought the website is a very simple, easy to use navigation bar. It's a very simplified layout, but it's not overcrowding the pages like it used to do. And I think it really does, like my homepage, which is back over here, I think it really does draw my user's attention because it does have this video in the center and allows it's going to pique students' curiosities. They're like,